Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 3, Episode 3, Gridlock. This is probably the most strategic story of the series prior to the finale, I would say. Um, Gridlock is strategically placed third, and I will give my reasons for that. Firstly, it's when Martha starts asking about the Doctor's home world, and when he has to pretend that everything's hunky-dory, so to speak. Everything's fine, and he just lies and shows off about the plan. Well, he describes Gallifrey, and Russell T Davies explained in Doctor Who Confidential that after mentioning it before with Rose, he had to come up with something a bit more different to talk about it. So he started describing the planet in having the Doctor describe the planet in some earlier and later scenes, and the whole bit about him lying and showing off to Martha throughout the story about not being the last of the Time Lords and holding the secret back from her is great. It's also his big motivation to try and find her, besides caring about her, of course. As well as that, we also have the Face of Bo's message to the Doctor, which I'll come back to later. But the Face of Bo's message is going to be incredibly important to the third to last episode of the series, which of course ties in with what happens in the final two. Also, the descriptions of Gallifrey are realised when we see Gallifrey for the first time in the new series, and the first time since probably the Five Doctors on the screen. I would say, yeah, Trial of Time was on a spaceship, so probably the first time since the Five Doctors on the screen. And even then, that was the Death Zone. So the first time we see Gallifrey properly since the Invasion of Time will be in the Sound of Drums. And it will fit more of a description of what is spoken in this story, and I'll get on to that in that story. But from what we sound here, it's making a Gallifrey sound even more beautiful than what we may have previously seen. And when we get to the Sound of Drums, our expectations are probably going to be met. Yeah, and it sets the bar for this, and what we see in the Sound of Drums sets the bar for what Gallifrey will look like in following new series stories when it comes back again a few more times. And finally, the fact that this is the story the Doctor tells Martha his story, where he mentions that the Daleks were the ones he fought, is in the episode directly before the next Dalek story. So these guys over there will approve. So yeah, I think this story is strategically placed for those reasons. But what's the story itself like? Well, the Doctor and Martha arrive in New York, yeah, or 15 times New York, in New Earth, 30 years after the events of New Earth, and they're in the Undercity section. The Face of Bo, however, has been keeping the city alive following a virus that developed in a new mood in a mood from 24 years ago. So in the 30 years since New Earth, 24 of those years have been half dead, and lots of people have been trapped on the motorway to escape the virus. But the Face of Bo has been trying to save New Earth and from total collapse, especially in New York, and has got Novice Haim to go and look for the Doctor, who is serving as his nurse for penance for her sins in New Earth. However, a young couple kidnap Martha so that they can get onto the fast lane of the motorway to go up to Brooklyn, where they can start a new life together, leading to the Doctor to give chase and eventually joining Thomas K. Brannigan, played by the fantastic Adrian O'Halloran, who I know from being in Death in Paradise. And he helps the Doctor get a bit further up the motorway and tries to do his best as he can. But because everybody and their cat children, including Brannigan's, are stuck on the motorway, they're unable to go very far. That's why it takes them literally years to go only a few miles. Imagine if this was the situation on actual motorways or highways or equivalents of in different countries. Imagine if I live in Bishop Stortford and we've got the motorway, the M11, right on our doorstep, and it's about 15 miles north to the next junction. Imagine having to travel 15 miles from junctions 8/8A of the M11 at Bishop Stortford Stansted Airport to junction 9 for the A11 near Great Chesterford. It would, for 15 miles, that would probably take about half my, well, at this point I'm 20, it'd probably take that many years to go 15 miles, maybe even more. It took Brannigan 12 years to go 5 miles, and it's going to take about 6 years to take the Martha and the couple about 10 years to go 6 miles. So when I say it's going to be 21 years to make 15 miles, if the M11 was like the motorway here, then actually I'm being more optimistic than anything. It would actually probably be more closer to 40. Going the other way, going down to Junction 7 for Harlow, that's closer to 10 miles. So that would probably be met within a good couple of years. Yeah. So yeah, imagine if our motorways were like the one here, especially the M4 in Wiltshire. Good God, they have 12 miles between junctions for quite a lot of their routes. Blimey. Yeah, you won't be able to get off the M4 for several years. So, as things aren't really moving across very fast, the Doctor decides to climb down from car to car to before getting to the bottom prior to the fast lane and the very bottom. And it's here that we find out. However, throughout the story, we're aware that there's something living down below, at the bottom. Although Milo, the man of the couple that kidnapped Martha, believes that it's their ducks. Cheem, his wife, believes the stories that they've heard. By the way, they're not that bad people. They're not really kidnappers. They just needed the third person, although the way that they went around it made them look like kidnapping. But they're actually nice. They're actually nice guys, and Martha gets to hang out with them, and Cheem's having a baby, so that's why they're going down to Brooklyn. Yay! However, if things had turned out differently for that story, none of them would have escaped. As it turns out, when the Doctor gets down to the lower levels, he finds out what the creatures at the bottom are, just as Martha and her friends start getting into trouble with them. And it turns out these great big monsters, I'm getting goosebumps at the moment, are, in fact, the Macra from the Macra Terror. Wow, that was a great twist. I didn't even, when I saw this story first time in 2007, I wasn't even aware of the Macra. So that's really cool for introducing new audiences to them, as well as pay off for the older audiences who might have seen the Macra Terror back 40 years prior to this story's broadcast. Or at least, or people who may have read about it, like on the Doctor Who Classic Series website, like I would do a little bit later on, and in books like the Monster Guide I have somewhere, where it talks about the Macra Terror, and then there's Gridlock when they're talking about the Macra. Oh, blimey. And of course, the Macra Terror recently got reanimated last year, so now even more new audiences can not only check that story out, but if they haven't seen Gridlock before, then they're going to be surprised to see, oh my gosh, it's those creatures from that story that got reanimated not too long ago. That's really cool. And yeah, this is a fantastic reveal, and there's a nice bit of dialogue referencing the Macra Terror about them being empire builders using humans as slaves to mine their gas. The filthier the better. Nice references to Macra Terror. However, as that was set many thousands of years ago, at this point in time, they've now become beasts, savages that are living underneath New York, just trying to feeding off the exhaust fumes of the cars. Wonder how they got down there. They must have found a way. The people of New York would have, of course, put the cars on the motorway to keep them safe from Bliss, the Bliss virus. However, would they have been aware of the Macra Terror below the motorway? I don't know. But also reference. But yeah, But yeah, the Macra being here, great twist, and puts an extra level of threat. Also, these Macra look really, really great. I mean, compared to the original props of the original Macra Terror story, of course, the animation the animated Macra are fantastic, but the props themselves look a bit Here, the CGI Macra looks really great, and they look even more like crabs than they did before, and it just looks they look absolutely great. And they add the level of threat that was already. I mean, the motorway was already a kind of a downer place, but now we got a level of threat and excitement. which really kicks the story into high gear towards in the latter half of the episode, alongside the dramatic and emotional backstory of what's been going on as told by Novice Haim. But eventually the Doctor decides it's time to let everybody back into New York and hopefully live amongst the sky and live back into the city. With the city with the power back on, people just need to go back into the city and escape the motorway, escape the exhaust fumes, and not worry about being stuck down there, and also avoid being eaten by Macra, basically, or killed by the Macra. I suppose the cars on the fast lane getting down too close to them would eventually cause for them to start attacking cars for whatever reason. Maybe it's getting too close to their personal space. So the Doctor, Novice Haim, and the Face of Boa are able to save Martha and everybody on the motorway and get them back into New York. However, this comes at a cost, as the Face of Boa gives his last breath to say, last piece of energy to save them, as he has been dying since plugging himself into the power source, and this was basically the last amount of power he had, and now he's dying. However, just before he dies, witnessed by the Doctor, Novice Haim, and Martha, who pops in, before he dies, he tells his big secret to the Doctor that was mentioned in New Earth, and it's this bit that like I said, I'd get back to again after talking about it when I was talking about it being a strategic point in the series. I'm also getting a bit emotional at the moment now because the Face of Boa was a really great character, but his final words are, "You are not alone." Oh, I'm getting goosebumps now as well. This is going to be a very important thing later on in the series. In episode 11, it's going to pop back up again, so stay tuned to find out. We've got a couple more episodes before Utopia, but still, stay tuned. Besides, we've got the series art popping up in a few other episodes in the meantime. But yeah, a great reveal, and it also makes the Doctor tell Martha about, reveal the truth about everything, and go into start talking about Gallifrey again, and at the very end, and it's a great ending, especially with the final shot of the cars around New York. Such a great story. So, Gridlock. Some quick negative nitpicks. There is a few editing issues. There might be the occasion. There's one or two occasions of that zoom edit transition from the Runaway Bride and Smith and Jones again. Again, like Smith and Jones, it's not that much. Once or twice maybe, and there is this odd abrupt cut from when the Doctor's leaving Pharmacy Town to inside Martha's kidnapper's cars. It's a bit of an abrupt cut, more so from maybe the sound rather than the visuals. Other than that, I don't really have any problems with Gridlock. Yeah, some of the CG is a bit dated, but it was 2007 and it looks very believable but it would look very believable at the time, and the fact that it still holds up, just even if a little dated, but still holds up just as well. And even though it looks a little dated, it still holds up really well, and some really great stuff. Brannigan is a fantastic side character, and I love Adrian O'Halloran. In fact, this is probably the first story of Series 3 to have side characters who are worth mentioning. Not only Brannigan, but also have the Cassini sisters, who are actually wife and wife. One of them is a car spotter. Those are pretty cool details. Brannigan's wife Valerie and their kitten children. Martha's not kidnappers. Milo and Sheen, they're great. And of course, Novice Haim is technically a side character. We also get some people who just don't really contribute much, but they're good to see, like the guys, the people the Doctor climbs into the cars. We've got this guy who's painted all in white and wears white. Japanese couple with lots of scarves. A nudity couple. A guy who's covered in red. And finally, a guy who dresses like a gentleman, a 20th century gentleman who's going to the races. He's actually probably my favourite of the supporting characters who doesn't do much. So those people the Doctor was climbing through the car windows down. In fact, out of the characters who didn't contribute a huge amount, he and the white person witness and are happy to see the doors above them open for them to be freed. Of course, most of the scenes are with Brannigan. And the Cassini sisters also get a few bits. But anyway, But yeah, the guy who looks like he's going to the races is a pretty good character as well in his few scenes, and he has a good couple of reactions to what the Doctor and Office Haynes say in a few bits, as well as also being the one there to witness the Doctor being surprised to see the Macra. But yeah, there's some really good supporting characters. I also like the Pharmacy Town sellers there as well. They're pretty good characters, despite not having a huge amount. And also the people at the start, the parents of a girl who gets forget from one of these pharmacy sellers. They their bit at the start is a good way to get the audience hooked into this adventure straight off the bat. Also, the Sally Calypso hologram stuff is pretty good as well. So, Gridlock, I think this is a great story, strategically placed in Series 3 for plot point reasons, as well as setting up some parts of the story arc of the series, or at least something that's going to come around a bit more in the finale, and a great emotional end to the New Earth trilogy that started with the end of the world and continued in New Earth. The Face of Bone New Earth trilogy. And yeah, it's just a really great story. It's a great character story. It's a great adventure. Great return for the Macra. Great conclusion to the New Earth trilogy. Great final Face of Bone story with some great supporting characters and some really fun and engaging adventures, and a great secret reveal that's going to play an important role in an episode later on in the series. So I'm going to be giving Gridlock a 10 out of 10. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to give this a 10 out of 10, but apart from a few nitpicks, this story is, I don't know if I would say a masterpiece, but it's certainly very strong. It's certainly the best episode of Series 3 so far, and the best episode of the show since The Satan Pit. And this is just a very strong story and a really, really great adventure. We are going to have episodes later on in the series that will rival it for the top spot, like Blink, maybe Human Nature and the Family of Bloods. That's a very popular one. But I certainly think this one's a very strong story early on in the series. So that's my review of Gridlock. Next time, Martha Jones is going to come face to face with the Daleks, where after the Doctor mentioned them being the race that he fought in the Time War, and he is not going to be happy when he sees them again either. And this time we're going to be back in New York again, this time in 1930, the Depression era, for Helen Rayner's Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. And after seeing Dalek's Tech at the end of the trailer of this episode and of the big Series 3 coming soon trailer at the end of The Runaway Bride, I am looking forward to seeing another Dalek story, even though even though it comes very soon after Doomsday, and it's literally the next two-part stories. There's two-part Dalek stories in a row, and they do get a little bit overused in the new series. But despite that, I am still looking forward to seeing Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. Tune in tomorrow to find out what I think of that story, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Probably the most strategically placed Doctor Who story of the throughout the episode. So yeah, some strategically placed stuff. Also the fact that and these guys will approve of that. However, however, things are because the motorway has pretty much everybody in there, cats, including Brannigan himself and his children. But because everybody in their because everybody in their pet cat, no, but because everybody in there. So actually, I think when I say it's going to take 20 miles to be 20 minutes, and that's Wiltshire in the UK, and that's Wiltshire, England, by the way. So But if they haven't seen Gridlock before, however, would they have been aware of the macro terror? How is but yeah. Anyway, so the Doctor is able to help save. So the Doctor in the face of Bo. So stay tuned So stay tuned. Besides, we've got the other series arc on. Besides, we've got the series arc. And finally, basically a race. In fact, besides him, the only other person who gets a reaction out of seeing the. Besides, also the Sally Calypso hologram stuff is pretty fun. When she's on. Also, the Sally Calypso stuff when. So yeah, Gridlock. I think this is, despite some dated. So no, I won't go there. And something that's certainly gonna be important, and with a reveal that's going to be important to the series later on, which will be even more dramatic, and a secret that's and a surprise in a even bigger and more dramatic revelation in a later episode later yeah. And this is the earliest episode, but before that we have our